Cold War shadows stretched across Britain, not just in politics, but on film. Imagine scripts so steeped in secrecy that they mirrored the very games spies played in real life. Some works were lauded, others suppressed. A few even whispered about in intelligence corridors. What happens when cinema gets too close to reality? Tonight we uncover 15 British Cold War dramas that nailed real espionage, sometimes too well for comfort. Number 15. The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, 1965. When John le Carré's novel exploded in bookstores, audiences expected glamour, gadgets, and Bond-like bravado. Instead, Martin Ritt's film version delivered bleakness. Richard Burton, brooding and hollow-eyed, became Alec Leamas, the jaded spy who sees betrayal everywhere. The film was praised as authentic, its gray London streets and East German walls echoing the atmosphere of actual intelligence operations. But authenticity has its price. Some critics accuse the film of being too real, a smear against Britain's security image. Whispers claimed certain MI6 veterans bristled, saying it revealed tradecraft too accurately. Dead drops, double agents, honey traps. Whether fact or paranoia, the rumors gave the film an aura of forbidden knowledge. Behind the scenes, Richard Burton clashed with producers over his heavy drinking, yet his instability seemed to fuel the character's torment. American studios hesitated, fearing audiences would reject a spy story without spectacle. They were wrong. The film became a critical hit, though mainstream audiences found it chilling and depressing. Its legacy, still studied today as perhaps the most real spy film ever made. Unlike Bond, this one reminded viewers of the moral cost of espionage, that agents were pawns, often sacrificed. As the Iron Curtain thickened, this film left behind not excitement, but dread, a cinematic relic that blurred the line between entertainment and disclosure. Number 14. The Ipcress File, 1965. If The Spy Who Came In From the Cold showed espionage as bleak, The Ipcress File gave it bureaucracy. Harry Palmer, played by Michael Caine with sardonic wit, was no tuxedoed agent. He was a working-class spy, filling out forms, cooking eggs, and resenting his bosses. Yet when brainwashing, kidnappings, and defectors entered the picture, audiences leaned in, realizing this wasn't glamour. It was paperwork wrapped in paranoia. The controversy came quickly. Government officials quietly disliked how the Ipcress file portrayed British intelligence as a nest of infighting, incompetence, and manipulation. Some claimed the film's depiction of mind control experiments mirrored real rumors surrounding MI5 and psychological warfare research. Was it coincidence, or did filmmakers brush up against classified truths? Behind the camera, producer Harry Saltzman, who also co-owned the Bond franchise, intended the Ipcress file as the anti-Bond. The clash of styles nearly wrecked the production, with executives worried audiences wouldn't accept a spy who shopped for groceries. Yet, critics loved it, praising its realism and sardonic humor. The film became iconic in Britain, giving rise to sequels and cementing Michael Caine's stardom. Its lasting impact lies in how it made espionage relatable. Spies weren't superheroes, but civil servants under fluorescent lights. The legacy? It inspired an entire generation of cynical, grounded spy thrillers, and it left audiences asking, was truth hidden in plain sight? Number 13. The Deadly Affair, 1967. Released at a time when Bond mania dominated the globe, The Deadly Affair quietly offered something more unsettling. Based on John le Carré's novel Call for the Dead, the film starred James Mason as Charles Dobbs, a weary intelligence officer investigating what seems like a simple suicide. The deeper he digs, the more corruption and betrayal he uncovers. Its reputation was of a slow burn, almost too realistic spy story. No gadgets, no martinis, just cigarette smoke, interrogations, and the gnawing fear that nobody can be trusted. Audiences expecting action were puzzled, but critics quickly labeled it a rare, honest portrait of espionage. The controversy? Censors reportedly worried about its bleak tone, particularly the suggestion that British officials could be morally compromised. Some reviewers accused the film of being anti-establishment propaganda during a time when Britain needed to project confidence. There were whispers, too, that MI6 objected to its depiction of spy masters as manipulative and paranoid. Behind the scenes, director Sidney Lumet insisted on filming in washed-out tones to drain the glamour from every frame. In fact, Columbia Pictures ordered him to recolor the prints for the American release because the desaturation was deemed too depressing. James Mason himself fought against some script rewrites, fearing the film would lose its edge. Legacy-wise, The Deadly Affair didn't set the box office on fire, but it lived on as an essential anti-thriller. For students of Cold War cinema, it's still remembered as a piece that dared to expose the bureaucracy and duplicity behind every operation. In a decade that adored fantasy, this film clung stubbornly to grim truth. It left viewers with a question that still resonates. In a world where every ally could be a traitor, who can you really trust? Number 12. The Looking Glass War, 1969. By the late 1960s, espionage thrillers were splitting into two camps: escapist Bond adventures and gritty le Carré adaptations. The Looking Glass War, based on another le Carré novel, dared to strip espionage to its raw bones. Starring Anthony Hopkins and Ralph Richardson, the film followed an inexperienced young agent sent on a doomed mission behind the Iron Curtain. The film was infamous for its harsh realism. Instead of glory, the agent faced boredom, confusion, and death. Critics called it a brutal dismantling of spy myths. Audiences, however, recoiled. Many left theaters angry, claiming they wanted entertainment, not despair. The controversy went deeper. Rumors circulated that the story had been inspired by actual botched operations in Eastern Europe. Some even claimed British intelligence pressured the studio to soften the ending. Lumet's fingerprints weren't here, Frank Pearson directed, but the paranoia and moral compromise felt chillingly authentic. Behind the scenes, production tensions flared. Hopkins, still early in his career, complained about the script's constant rewrites. Financing nearly collapsed after American distributors feared the film would flop in a Bond-dominated market. They were right. The movie bombed financially, but history would reappraise it. Today, The Looking Glass War is regarded as one of the most faithful portraits of the Cold War, depicting espionage not as glamorous, but as futile. Its bleakness made it timeless, echoing the real tragedies of agents used and discarded. The film's legacy endures as a warning. The Cold War wasn't about triumphs, but sacrifices swallowed in silence. Number 11. Funeral in Berlin, 1966. Michael Caine returned as Harry Palmer in Funeral in Berlin, and this time the tone turned darker. Where the Ipcress file was sardonic, Funeral in Berlin dived headfirst into moral ambiguity. The plot followed Palmer arranging the defection of a Soviet colonel, only to discover layers of double-dealing that threatened to consume him. Audiences loved the cool Berlin setting, with its wall looming as both backdrop and metaphor. The film's reputation quickly grew. It was stylish, cynical, and sharp. Yet, it also courted controversy. Some critics accused the production of glamorizing East-West espionage at a time when Berlin remained a powder keg. Others argued that its portrayal of Soviet defectors too closely resembled real, ongoing cases. Rumors swirled that actual British intelligence was uneasy about the script. Did it reveal too much about how defectors were smuggled through checkpoints? The whispers added to its aura of authenticity. Behind the scenes, Michael Caine's growing fame clashed with producer Harry Saltzman's iron grip. Saltzman wanted Palmer to rival Bond, but Caine resisted turning the character into another franchise machine. Tensions nearly derailed filming, particularly during scenes shot in Berlin, where East German authorities monitored the production crew from a distance. The film became a hit in Britain and abroad, solidifying Palmer as the thinking man's spy. Its legacy lies in its haunting use of location, the Berlin Wall as not just scenery, but a character itself. Unlike Bond's world-saving antics, this story was grounded in the real paranoia of divided Germany. And, in the final shot, when allies and enemies blurred into one, audiences were left unsettled. It was a reminder that in Cold War espionage, truth was always just another mask. Number 10. The Quiller Memorandum, 1966. While James Bond defined glamour, the Quiller Memorandum defined unease. Based on the novel by Elliston Trevor, this film starred George Siegel as Quiller, an American agent sent to Berlin to infiltrate a neo-Nazi cell still active during the Cold War. With Alec Guinness and Max von Sydow in support, the movie carried gravitas from the first frame. Its reputation? Stylish, yet unnerving. Unlike Bond's gadgets, Quiller relied on wit, improvisation, and psychological brinkmanship. But what set it apart was its refusal to offer clarity. Characters spoke in riddles, motivations blurred, even allies felt untrustworthy. Audiences were left grasping for certainty, a mirror of espionage reality. The controversy struck when some critics accused it of equating British and American intelligence with the authoritarian methods they fought against. The suggestion that spies were morally compromised disturbed audiences. There were also whispers that its portrayal of underground fascist networks in Berlin hit uncomfortably close to reality, sparking fears that such groups hadn't truly died after the war. Behind the scenes, production clashed over tone. Screenwriter Harold Pinter's cryptic dialogue gave the film its edge, but infuriated producers who wanted something more straightforward. Siegel himself struggled, saying he was acting inside a maze. Reviews were divided. Some praised its cerebral nature, others condemned it as too opaque. Legacy-wise, the Quiller Memorandum became a cult classic for espionage purists. Its haunting score by John Barry and the icy cinematography captured the lingering shadows of both war and Cold War. Today it's remembered not for box office triumph, but for daring to leave viewers unsettled. The final twist? In espionage, certainty doesn't exist, and the film made sure its audience felt that in their bones. Number 9. A Dandy in Aspic, 1968. What happens when your protagonist is both spy and traitor? A Dandy in Aspic, starring Lawrence Harvey, dared to ask that question. The story followed a British double agent ordered to hunt down himself. Caught between loyalty to Moscow and survival in London, the film spiraled into paranoia and doom. Its reputation was grim, even before release. Critics anticipated a muddled mess after director Anthony Mann died mid-production, leaving Lawrence Harvey to finish the film himself. The result was uneven yet strangely fascinating, an espionage tale that felt cursed both on and off screen. Controversy swirled. The idea of a British officer serving Moscow wasn't just daring, it was provocative, hinting at real betrayals like Kim Philby and the Cambridge spy ring. Some accused the film of glamorizing treachery. Others thought it hit far too close to Britain's real scandals. Whispers suggested intelligence officers despised its release, fearing it reopened wounds still raw. Behind the scenes, Harvey's dual role as star and reluctant director caused chaos. Actors complained of disorganization, and producers fought over edits. Mia Farrow, brought in as Harvey's co-star, admitted years later she felt the set was haunted by Mann's absence. Critics savaged the film on release. But here's the twist. Decades later, it was reappraised. Its fractured style came to embody the paranoia of its era, where identity was always split and loyalty always compromised. The final shot, ambiguous, despairing, lingers as one of Cold War cinema's bleakest moments. Its legacy, a failure at the box office, but a mirror to the fractured loyalties haunting Britain at the height of espionage scandals. Sometimes the story behind the film is just as haunted as the story on screen. Number 8. The Human Factor, 1979. Though technically arriving at the tail end of the Cold War's most intense years, The Human Factor carried the weight of real betrayals. Directed by Otto Preminger and adapted from Graham Greene's novel, it followed a low-level British intelligence officer who leaked secrets to Moscow, not for money or glory, but for love. The film's reputation was that of an anti-thriller. There were no car chases, no exotic locales, just office corridors, moral dilemmas, and the suffocating tension of betrayal. Audiences expecting Bond-style spectacle were left bewildered, but critics admired its courage to strip espionage bare. Controversy hit when the film was accused of echoing real events, particularly the revelations about MI6 mole George Blake. Green himself admitted he'd drawn on actual cases, though names and details were disguised. Some claimed the government bristled at how closely the fiction resembled classified files. Behind the scenes, Preminger battled constant resistance. Financing wavered, casting changed repeatedly, and distributors hesitated. Richard Attenborough's performance was lauded, yet many thought the film too dry for mainstream success. It failed commercially, cementing its reputation as one of Green's least celebrated adaptations. But its legacy endures among espionage scholars. It's studied as a rare drama where betrayal isn't about ideology. It's about human weakness, the quiet desperation that makes people do the unthinkable. For Cold War Britain, it reflected a terrifying truth, that the enemy wasn't always ideological. Sometimes the enemy was simply human need, and that haunting question remains. If loyalty can be broken by something as simple as love, how safe is any nation's secret? Number 7. Smiley's People, 1982. Though technically made for television, Smiley's People was cinematic in scope and remains one of the most faithful portrayals of espionage ever produced. Adapted from John le Carré's novel, this BBC drama brought Alec Guinness back as George Smiley, the quiet, bespectacled spy master who triumphs not through violence but through patience, intellect, and moral compromise. Its reputation was immense. Critics hailed Guinness's performance as the definitive spy portrayal, subtle, weary, devastatingly real. This was no Bond adventure. Instead, it was the chessboard of espionage laid bare, slow moves, small sacrifices, and devastating outcomes. The controversy. Some insiders claimed it was too accurate, especially in its portrayal of Soviet networks and the process of turning defectors. Le Carré himself admitted to drawing heavily on his MI6 background, raising suspicions that the BBC was airing state secrets thinly disguised as drama. There were whispers of nervous meetings at Broadcasting House, debating whether certain details should be softened. Behind the scenes, the production was meticulous. Locations were chosen for authenticity, not glamour. Guinness himself studied le Carré's own mannerisms, bringing eerie realism to Smiley's silences and pauses. Yet, there were tensions. Some executives worried audiences wouldn't tolerate the slow pacing. They underestimated the public. The series was a critical and commercial triumph. Legacy-wise, Smiley's People, alongside its predecessor, Tinker Tailor's Soldier Spy, cemented Britain's reputation for serious, literary spy drama. Even decades later, it remains the gold standard for espionage adaptations. Its haunting message endures, that spies don't save the world, they break themselves to preserve illusions. And in Smiley's weary eyes, audiences saw the true cost of a secret war. Number 6. The Macintosh Man, 1973. Directed by John Huston and starring Paul Newman, The Macintosh Man offered a distinctly British take on Cold War paranoia. The plot followed a government agent sent undercover as a convicted criminal to expose a ring of traitors leaking secrets to the Soviets. What unfolded was less spectacle than a layered game of deception. Its reputation was conflicted. Audiences expected more action, given Newman's star power, but instead got an icy tale of betrayal and entrapment. Critics admired its ambition but were divided on its execution. Some called it overly complicated, while others praised its refusal to glorify espionage. Controversy lingered in whispers. The film's depiction of British officials covertly negotiating with traitors unnerved some reviewers, who thought it uncomfortably mirrored real scandals like the Portland spy ring. Did Huston and screenwriter Walter Hill borrow too heavily from classified cases? Officials never confirmed, but the rumors gave the film an edge of danger. Behind the scenes, Huston clashed with the studio over budget constraints and rewrites. Newman, though professional, reportedly grew frustrated with the film's bleak tone, saying it lacked the thrill audiences wanted. Yet his performance, detached, quietly angry, fit the role perfectly. Legacy? Though it underperformed on release, The Macintosh Man has since been reappraised as an overlooked Cold War gem. It avoided glamour, showing espionage as a labyrinth where trust collapsed and ideals crumbled. Its message was simple yet devastating. In a world built on deception, even the good guys were expendable. Number 5. Callan, 1967 to 1972. Before Le Carré's Smiley dominated British screens, there was Callan. First a gritty ITV series, then a theatrical film. It followed Edward Woodward as David Callan, a government assassin who despised his own job. Unlike suave spies, Callan was working class, brooding, and painfully human. The show's reputation was groundbreaking. It stripped away glamour, showing Britain's security service as bureaucratic, cynical, and ruthless. Callan's assignments weren't grand missions. They were grim eliminations, often of small, tragic figures caught in political games. Viewers were both horrified and transfixed. The controversy was fierce. Some MPs even complained in Parliament that the show glamorized murder by the state, while others argued it did the opposite, showing how morally corrosive such work truly was. Whispers claimed intelligence officials disliked how closely the series resembled deniable operations, whispered about in Whitehall. Behind the scenes, the series nearly collapsed multiple times due to censorship battles. Edward Woodward himself admitted he found the role psychologically draining, as Callan's despair mirrored the grim atmosphere of the late 60s. The eventual 1974 film continued the bleak tone, doubling down on paranoia. Legacy-wise, Callan influenced generations of spy dramas. It was the working man's answer to Bond. No tuxedos, no martinis, just moral compromise and the crushing weight of obedience. Its haunting refrain still echoes. What does it do to a man's soul when the state orders him to kill? Number 4. Tinker Tailor, Soldier Spy, 1979. If Cold War drama had a crown jewel, Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy claimed it. This 7-part BBC adaptation of John le Carré's most famous novel introduced the world to Alec Guinness as George Smiley, the unassuming spymaster tasked with unmasking a Soviet mole inside British intelligence. Its reputation was nothing short of monumental. Unlike Bond's glamour or Palmer's cynicism, Smiley brought quiet devastation. Guinness's subtle, weary performance became iconic. Every pause, every glance, a masterstroke of restrained tension. Viewers sat spellbound, realizing that espionage was not explosions, but whispers. Controversy brewed even before airing. The BBC reportedly debated heavily whether its thinly veiled references to the Cambridge spy ring were too close to the bone. Smiley's hunt for a traitor mirrored Britain's real embarrassment at the hands of Philby, Burgess, and Maclean. Some intelligence insiders quietly admitted it felt like a dramatized dossier. Behind the scenes, director John Irvin fought to preserve the novel's intricate detail, resisting studio demands to streamline the story. Guinness himself initially resisted the role, fearing he could never live up to Le Carré's creation. Instead, he immortalized it. Audiences in Britain and abroad hailed it as one of the greatest dramas ever produced. Legacy, eternal. Tinker Tailor, Soldier. Spy remains the definitive Cold War espionage drama, studied not just as entertainment, but as near history. It taught audiences that true betrayal was quiet, devastating, and always personal. Number 3. The Man Who Never Was, 1956. Though predating the spy boom of the 60s, The Man Who Never Was deserves its place. Based on the true Operation Mincemeat, it dramatized Britain's ingenious deception during World War II, planting a corpse with fake documents to mislead the Nazis. But while set during the war, its Cold War resonance was unmistakable. Its reputation was fascinating, a war film framed like espionage. Critics praised its meticulous accuracy, while intelligence veterans privately noted it portrayed deception operations with uncanny realism. The controversy? Whispers circulated that the film revealed too much. Although based on declassified accounts, some insiders argued the movie's detail about planting false identities mirrored ongoing Cold War tradecraft. A few even claimed MI6 was uneasy with how much of the playbook had been shown. Behind the scenes, Clifton Webb's performance as Ewan Montague was praised for its icy precision, though the real Montague himself consulted on the film, adding another layer of authenticity. The production insisted on using real London and Gibraltar locations, giving it documentary-like grit. Legacy? The Man Who Never Was influenced Cold War dramas for decades. It showed that deception wasn't just a trick of wartime, but a permanent weapon of intelligence. Even today, it feels like a prelude to the shadow wars that would define the next 40 years. Number 2. Defense of the Realm, 1985. By the mid-80s, Cold War paranoia had shifted into high gear, and Defense of the Realm captured it perfectly. Gabriel Byrne starred as a journalist, uncovering a government cover-up tied to nuclear secrets and espionage scandals. Its reputation was razor-edged, a thriller that blurred journalism with spycraft. It wasn't just about spies and trench coats, but about cover-ups, blackmail, and the terrifying power of state secrecy. The controversy hit immediately. Some politicians accused it of fueling public distrust in Britain's nuclear program, which was already under scrutiny due to debates about American missiles stationed on UK soil. Critics noted uncanny parallels with real-life scandals involving political blackmail and intelligence overreach. Behind the scenes, the production was fraught with financing troubles. Many investors feared a film so openly critical of the government would be suppressed. But director David Drury and screenwriter Martin Stellman pushed ahead, determined to expose the unease of the era. The cast, Byrne, Denholm, Elliott, Greta Scacchi, delivered powerhouse performances. Legacy? Though overshadowed by Bond at the box office, Defense of the Realm is remembered as one of the boldest Cold War commentaries in British cinema. Its lesson was blunt. In the age of secrets, even truth-tellers could be silenced. Number 1. The Spy Who Came In From the Cold, 1965. We began our journey with it, and fittingly, it ends here. Martin Ritt's adaptation of John le Carré's masterpiece remains the single greatest British Cold War drama ever filmed. Why revisit it at number 1? Because no other work better captured the existential dread of espionage. Richard Burton's Alec Liamis wasn't just a spy. He was a broken man crushed between two systems that both used and discarded him. The final devastating scene at the Berlin Wall is etched in cinema history. The controversy never died. Critics hailed it as art, but governments feared its realism. Burton's performance, fueled by drink and despair, seemed almost too authentic. Audiences staggered out of theaters in silence. This wasn't escapism. It was the Cold War distilled into tragedy. Its legacy is immortal. It shaped everything that followed, from the Ipcress file to Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy, from Callan to Defense of the Realm. It showed that espionage on screen didn't need explosions or gadgets. It needed truth, however bleak. And that truth was simple. In the Cold War, victory was an illusion. Everyone lost something. These 15 dramas stripped espionage of glamour and revealed its brutal heart. Betrayals, secrets, illusions, and sacrifices. They dared to show spies not as heroes, but as haunted men and women caught in endless games. Which of these forgotten classics shocked you most? Comment your thoughts, like this video, and subscribe for more hidden stories from cinema's shadowy past.